Hello and welcome to the Winter Wreath Workshop, presented by Fulton County Arts and Culture Department, brought to you as a part of our Virtually Creative On-Demand series. We're excited to offer you creative classes in the comfort of home. My name is Miranda Smith, and I am an arts education coordinator at Abernathy Art Center, and I teach ceramics and mixed media. So today we are going to be working on our Winter Wreath Workshop. So as you can see on my table, I have different elements that I'm going to be pulling from to work on this wreath. I've got, piles of leaves that are sorted out by color over on this side. And I have some foliage, some grass, and some flowers, buds, little pods, some acorns, and some pine cones that I'm going to be pulling from today. I also have some moss. There's a ribbon, and I've got a couple of pumpkins. You can find any of these things at any of your local craft shops. Joann's, Michael's, Hobby Lobby, even the Dollar Tree. Any place that sells artificial flowers or foliage, you can use anything from anywhere to create the wreath that you would like for your front door. So today, I am going to be going for this type of arrangement today. And so this is our final project. It may not look exactly the same, but we're going to get close to it as possible. Also with me today, I've got some scissors, I've got some wire cutters, I've also have some needle nose pliers. I have some soft gauge wire. If you can see how really flexible that is, this is the type of wire that you would like to get. It comes in silver and green. You would prefer this because this will allow you to actually wrap it around your elements and get a really nice, snug, tight fit. You want to stay away from this type of wire. This is a heavier gauge wire. If you can see, it's kind of harder to bend when you try to flex it out, especially when you're winding something around an element. Sometimes you get gaps and it's not as tight as you would like it to be. So these are used most for if you are making flowers yourself, like out of paper or things like that, you can actually use this wire, or a little heavier, even heavier than this, to do that. So stay away from this wire, and this wire is good. Doesn't matter whether it's silver or green. I'm going to be hiding it behind elements, so I'm not really worried about the color so much. And then the coup de grace, the wreath itself. This is an 18-inch grapevine wreath. I love working with grapevine wreaths just because they're so densely packed, and they're really wonderful for you to be able to slide things under before you start to wrap off. Now, if you would like to use ribbon on your wreath, you see this is a burlap ribbon. It's about 5.5 inches. You can get this anywhere from 3 inches to 5.5 inches. They come in a variety of colors. I got this from Walmart. I also got these from Walmart. This I got from Joann's, but Walmart also carries this. So, the wreath doesn't have to be this really, really pricey thing. Now, if you would like to use ribbon in your wreath and say you want it to flow throughout, I would suggest you do that before you add any of your elements to it. And then, by going in and tucking where you want it to be. And your ribbon doesn't have to be burlap. The ribbon can be satin. It could be whatever color you need it to be. It could be cotton. It could be, there's a variety of materials. But you want to make sure that you put the ribbon on first before you add your other elements. If you want a bow, sometimes it's nice to sketch these out. Even if you say, I can't draw a lick, I really can't. Just drawing a circle and just placing shapes will often give you a clear idea of what you want your wreath to look like. So if you would like to have an area that you want to place a bow that you've made yourself or you purchased, I would say, usually for me, I leave a space blank of where I want that bow to be at the very end, because it may be everything that I've done. When I get to where I want that bow to be, it may or may not flow with my overall design. And if it does, I'm going to slap it right in there, because once you put a bow in, unless you're putting that bow in more than one places, the bow kind of will become a focal point in a sense. So I always put my bow on last. just to see if I want the bow in there, because for me, if it doesn't work, I'll take it out and then I'll use another element. So I'm gonna start with one of these sunflowers. And a little bit about wreaths is that you think about line, and people will think about line when you're doing floral arrangements and vases, but you can also do that when you're working with the wreath too. Line just means how you want it to flow. You need to decide whether you want your wreath to be symmetrical or asymmetrical. Symmetrical, typically if I break it down, I could put this element here, put another one here, and then whatever I put on this side, I'm going to put on this side going in this direction, and it just kind of flows. Asymmetrical, I'll have this element here, here, and then I may offset it with a pumpkin that's kind of off to the side. That would be asymmetrical. When we're talking about harmony just can be through use of flowers, leaves, texture, the elements that you choose to use, the color of the things that you choose to use, whether you want the wreath inside or outside, whether you want it to flow with your decorative elements in your home, or whether you want it to kind of be kind of a showstopper on your door, if your door is painted or if it's natural wood, however you want it to be. But those are elements that we like to think about. So I'm gonna go in and start with my sunflower. Sometimes I turn the wreath to see what's gonna be the best position for me. I like to turn my elements in a little bit, just because I like them facing into the circle. There's nothing wrong with them facing out. It's just a preference for me. Some people will do both. When I want to go under and then up over, I'm usually going to try and get a little hook in there so I can wrap it around part of the vine and part of the flower. I love this wire because it's so nice in actually being able to wrap around and holding that flower snugly in place where I want it to be. Here's where your needle nose pliers come in handy. Wherever my finger doesn't fit, I can actually pull with those needle nose pliers to make my wrap really nice and tight around the whole form. It's wonderful to use to tuck in so you don't have to worry about anything poking you or poking through. Okay. So because I'm using a fairly decent sized flower that's going to become a focal, I want to make sure that those colors push-pull. So for me, I want to make sure that I'm able to go in, and some of these I already have pulled out, but I want to make sure I go in, and just with my fingers, I'm just pulling up, just so, again, give myself just a little hook. I don't know if you can see that. And I'm gonna go in underneath that leaf. And what's nice about using this wire is I don't have to necessarily go underneath a bunch of the elements that are in this wreath. I will attach it directly to the flower and the biggest part of that wreath. Right now I'm twisting to tighten. These needle nose pliers are so wonderful, guys. I can't even express to you that if you're going to do this, you really do need those pliers to get in there. They become that extra finger. I'm gonna leave a little bit of the wire out and see how we're building up so far, because I'm gonna come in with another leaf on the other side. And because my wire is a little on the longer side, it's nice to be able to catch the secondary leaf right up in that wrap and use my needle nose pliers to pull in and to make this really nice and firm, so I don't have to worry about these moving so much or going anywhere. Okay, I don't fluff out too much while I'm working. I leave my fluffing for the very end because I want to make sure that I get as many elements as I want on there, and I don't want anything to compete. So this one's a little fluffed out. I won't fluff it out too much more. I'll wait until I've got it in. I have cut away a little bit, so if you can see the difference in the size, I've cut away a piece of that because sometimes I may want to pull this forward, and so I need that length. That length is always nice to have. So I'm going to tuck it in. And you can see how I pull that leaf back, and this is giving me pretty good coverage. Now I'm not going to tie it down just yet. I like these little blue things. I don't know, they're like little pods. But you see how this one came off? Because I work with a lot of garlands, I love garlands just because I can chop them up. They have different elements on them. I'm not necessarily worried that this little guy popped off, right? Because I can always use something like this with this element, and then with my really soft wire, I can go in and I'm actually going to twist to tighten just at the base to make sure it doesn't go anywhere. And then I'm going to wrap that wire around. And I have created myself another little element. This is, the taller piece came from a different set of garland that I had, and the blue ones, the little blue pods, came from another one. And so look at that, voila, made my own little arrangement, which is nice because I can now go in and I can tuck it right in here. See how that blue is peeking out just a little bit? It doesn't hurt anything to show. If I feel like I don't like the placement of it, there's nothing to just go in and pop it out. I say that. There we go. I like that a little bit better. Just because now I'm breaking up that circle by this guy actually clearing that wreath, and I really like that. So with just a little bit more, of wire, now, because I have this lamb's ear right where I want it, I'm going to go in and I can tie this guy down. Like I said, it's always really nice to have just a little bit of a hook on that wire, and I'm going to come in with my needle nose pliers. I'm going to tie this guy in. I'm going to lift up, and again, I've made that wire just a little longer than I need because I can always pull it over and catch this little sprig that's got these blue pods on it. I'm watching where my finger goes to make sure that I pull that in and cross over so that it's in there snug and tight. Look at that. Okay, I'm going to, so when I ended up cutting my sunflower off, part of the leaf came off. Nothing wrong with that. I don't want that top part on there. I'm just gonna cut that off. But I do, however, like to be able to pop that right in and bring just a little bit of green to that. You can see that. And again, Sometimes you'll think, oh my goodness, I don't need to tie this down. I mean, it seems like it's in there pretty good until somebody knocks it, until somebody hits it, and then it falls. And it falls out of the wreath. So I try to make sure to go in, and if I'm not hot gluing an element in, I am definitely tying it down so that it is definitely attached and I don't have to worry about it falling off later. Again, where my fingers won't reach, this needle nose pliers come in handy. I'm twisting it with my hands, and then I'm going to go in and tuck it in. You can see that? So I've got a nice arrangement. You can see a little bit of blue there. You've got that green. I think on this side, maybe right in here, I want to add another, like kind of aged green. I'm going to hold it up for this one because it is in there. I want to pull it back towards me just a little bit so I can get that bottom edge. And then from the back side, I can actually attach using my wire, making sure I have it curved on the end so it'll just loop over. Sometimes I say that, you know, working on a wreath is kind of like surgery. You know, you feel like you are trying to get all your elements in there and you've got to grab it just to make sure that it's hooked in there now. Okay, and then just keep tucking in. You can see what we have right now. And you know, your leaves will start to fan out really nicely, make it look full. You can always go in and add more, hence why I make sure I keep a lot of elements, different elements on hand. So because I'm looking at my wreath, a couple of things. If I wanted to, at this point, make this the focal point, I could have put 2 up here and then maybe use leaves and probably a bow at the bottom. That would make this a little bit top heavy, which could be really nice. You know, sometimes having a bow up top and then having your elements down below, people would say a little bottom heavy, but can be a really nice presentation on a wreath. But because we're talking about symmetry and I've got this element here, I kind of like to turn to see where my next element's going to be. And so if this flower is facing this way, I'm going to place my flower to face the opposite direction. And on this side, I'm actually going to take that leaf. You can see I have it. So that's another element that's going to keep it in there nice and snug. I don't have to make sure that it's going to fall out anywhere. I like to bend my flowers at the end. And again, going back in with my wire. I'm going to go back in. And I'm going to tie this guy down. Now your wreaths can be whatever color palette you want it to be. Winter for some people can be an evergreen wreath with all white elements topped off with very bright, bright red pods or seeds or, you know, different things. But you can get so creative with wreaths. And you can get lost in the process of making them, because every time you step away, you can see where you can add just one more thing. And so sometimes it's hard to walk away. You want to finish it right then and there. Typically, if I was using a bunch of ribbon in this, I would finish it in one sitting. But because I have all these different elements that I can play with, I typically don't mind walking away from the wreath and then coming back and looking at it at least a day or two later to see if there's something else that I want to do differently. If I want to go in and change the color by giving it a punch of something else. So I'm going to go back in with another burgundy leaf, and if you can see, you see that burgundy leaf is there, this flower is looking this way, this one's looking this way. Just to create that flowing of the eye. And sometimes if you have cut your wire too short, don't panic, you know, because you don't want to waste wire. But even if it is a little too short, as long as you can get pliers in there and grab it, you can twist to tighten. You're not wasting anything. I'm going to cut away my excess that's sticking out, and with my needle nose pliers, I'm going to fold that over so I don't have to worry about that bothering anybody. Now I can still, even though I've tacked it in, I can still move it around just a little bit. I'm going to go in with another brown, and even though I have that green right there, I'm going to place this brown a little bit down low, get myself just a little bit more wire. And then go back into wrapping that leaf. Sometimes you'll run across, you know, really, really big blooms. And big blooms are nice, but you've got to make sure you accentuate them really well when you're working on the wreath. You don't want to have the bloom take over the wreath to the point where it just doesn't, maybe it looks like it needs to be in a vase versus a wreath. Depending on how big the wreath is, you know, the bigger the wreath, I always like to think the bigger the wreath, the bigger the bloom. The smaller the wreath, you know, you want to just buy your bulbs the appropriate size, what's going to work for the wreath. Again, this element, you can see, hold this up for you. You see this element is coming over on this side. So then when I go in with this element, I am going to cut away part of this stalk. I'm going to go in on this side. Before I do that, I'm going to move these petals of this lamb ear just a little bit. I made like the presentation another way. I'm just going to go in. You can bend these guys. And when I say bend, like because I am working in the round, I can go ahead and kind of bend that stalk a little bit, and that's gonna arch it out for me. So when I do put it in there, it's gonna follow more of that curve and give me more coverage. Once I have my placement where I want it, again, just a little hook. You can see that? And I'm just gonna go in and under. Grab my needle nose pliers. And twist to tighten. Now that longer element that I have on that side where I put those two little blue pods. I don't have another one of those. I wish I did. But, you know, as long as your larger elements are the same, headed in opposite directions, you can get away with plugging something else in there. It's not really going to hurt the overall design. So maybe I don't have any more of this guy, but you know, I do have this element, which could be nice, you know? That could be a nice little element of those together. So same thing I did with adding them to that, I'm gonna add to these little elements, probably shift them down just a little bit to make sure. And look at that. Not quite as dramatic as the other ones, but still doable, still workable. And I'm gonna shift them in place. See what that looks like? So it doesn't hurt anything because your eye is focusing on the sunflower, it's focusing on the lamb's ear. I am gonna come in with these more rustic green leaves on the other side. And you can see this wreath is taking shape. I'm going to go back in with the needle nose pliers. I'm going to twist that off just to tighten that element so I don't have much movement. My excess on this I can actually clip off because I don't need it. So you can see how I've changed this element and this element, but I kept my blue. So when your eye's focusing, it's looking at the sunflowers, it's looking at these, it's looking at the burgundy, and it's definitely looking at the lamb's ear going in each direction. So that's gonna keep the wreath more symmetrical. I could go on and on. This has been wonderful. I'm gonna pull out this other wreath so that you can see what a final would look like. You can hot glue moss, you can leave the grapevine showing through. All of those things, you can create your own beautiful wreath to dazzle your door or to hang in your home. Slide this guy over so you can see both of those. And so it doesn't take much, you know, and even though I'm not using the same exact things, using the same ideas, the same color scheme, it'll be slightly different, but still give me that wintry feel that I like. So guys, I hope you've had a wonderful time with me today. Thank you for joining me today for this virtually creative on-demand workshop presented by Fulton County Arts and Culture Department. And this is Miranda Smith wishing you guys a happy holidays. Bye-bye.